Howard Cosell was untouchable, or so the world thought. He stood by Muhammad Ali when the nation called him a traitor. He faced death threats for defending civil rights. He battled network executives, furious fans, and the unwritten rules of sports journalism. For decades, Cosell's voice was the voice of truth in American sports. Then, on one fateful September night, just 6 words during a football broadcast detonated a scandal that ended it all. What did he say that was so offensive? And why did some of his fiercest defenders come from the very community his words were said to offend? To understand the weight of that moment, we need to rewind. Howard William Cosell, originally Howard William Cohen, was born on March 25, 1918, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. His parents, Isidore and Nellie, were Polish Jewish immigrants fleeing persecution. Seeking opportunity, they moved the family to Brooklyn before Howard turned 3. Life in Brooklyn was noisy, crowded, and full of grit. It's where Howard honed the quick wit and sharp tongue that would define him. While other boys fought with fists, Howard fought with words. He was clever, cocky, and fearless. Even as a kid, he excelled in academics, becoming sports editor of his high school newspaper. By the time he was in college at NYU, he had earned a BA in English literature and was on his way to a law degree. But he also made a symbolic choice. He changed his last name from Cohen to Cosell, a variation on his grandfather's original Polish surname. It wasn't just about heritage, it was strategy. In a world where anti-Semitism lingered, Cosell wanted a name that stood out without holding him back. World War II interrupted his early legal career. Cosell served as a major in the U.S. Army Transportation Corps, coordinating massive troop and supply movements out of New York Harbor. He proved himself capable under pressure and emerged as one of the youngest officers in that role. While stationed in New York, he met a WAC sergeant named Mary Edith Emmy Abrams. Against military rules, he pursued her openly, going so far as to request permission from a general to date her. That bold move was pure Cosell. They married in 1944, and their love lasted 46 years, until her death in 1990. After World War II, Howard Cosell returned to New York and dove into civilian life with the same energy he brought to military logistics. He opened a private law practice in Manhattan, specializing in labor law. Within a few years, he was earning between $25,000 and $30,000 annually, a considerable sum for the late 1940s. He attracted major clients, including members of the New York Giants and even the legendary Willie Mays. Cosell was skilled, sharp, and aggressive in the courtroom. But despite the success, he was restless. The law, with all its order and formality, felt suffocating. In his office, he would sometimes drift into daydreams, standing by the window, narrating imaginary baseball games in that unmistakable baritone voice that no one had heard yet. He'd recite monologues to empty rooms, rehearsing how he would call a championship bout or break down a controversial play. His legal colleagues thought it was odd. Friends found it amusing. But for Cosell, it was a spark he couldn't ignore. "I lack sufficient mediocrity to survive in this business," he later told a reporter with a mix of frustration and swagger. He didn't want to simply make a living. He wanted to make a mark. He began moonlighting in radio, seizing every opportunity he could. One of his earliest chances came through a modest little league program on WABC radio, where he volunteered to let young kids interview major league players. It didn't pay a dime, but Cosell approached it like it was prime time on national television. For nearly 3 years, he kept practicing law by day and doing radio at night, all unpaid. He wasn't in it for money. He was after something deeper: relevance, connection, and influence. His legal career taught him how to construct arguments, challenge narratives, and think on his feet, skills that would later make him one of the most provocative voices in sports media. But even then, he knew his true courtroom wasn't in front of a judge. It was behind a microphone, speaking not to 12 jurors, but to millions. Cosell didn't just want to tell the story of the game. He wanted to become part of it. That something arrived in 1953 when he volunteered to host a children's baseball radio show on WABC. The gig paid nothing, but Cosell didn't care. For 3 years, he balanced law during the day and radio by night. His big break came when a player casually criticized a coach during an interview, and Cosell realized, let people speak freely and the truth spills out. That revelation changed his approach forever. Soon after, ABC asked him to host a segment called Speaking of Sports. Cosell secured a sponsor himself and turned the segment into a long-running staple. He moved into full-time sports broadcasting in 1956, bringing with him an aggressive, no-nonsense style that shook the industry. He didn't lob softball questions. He grilled athletes, challenged narratives, and injected politics into sports, a cardinal sin at the time. His unwavering stance on truth earned him a divided audience. Some called him the conscience of sports. Others labeled him the most hated man in broadcasting. But no one ignored him. Cosell made fans think. He made them uncomfortable. He made them feel. One of the most important chapters of Cosell's life began in 1964, when a young boxer named Cassius Clay changed his name to Muhammad Ali. Most of the media refused to acknowledge the change. But not Cosell. On national television, he said the name loud and clear, Muhammad Ali. When backlash erupted, he didn't flinch. He understood what it meant to be marginalized. He'd been the Jewish kid mocked for his heritage. He stood by Ali, even as the world turned on them both. Then, in 1967, when Ali refused to be drafted into the Vietnam War, Cosell defended him once again. While the rest of the media vilified Ali as a coward, Cosell said the government's actions were unjust and inhumane. Sponsors threatened to pull ads. ABC executives warned him. He didn't care. That defiance solidified a bond between Cosell and Ali that transcended sports. Their interviews were electric, playful, and confrontational. Part comedy, part activism, all truth. When Ali was banned from boxing, Cosell gave him a platform. He asked about the man, not just the fighter. And America saw Ali differently because of it. In 1970, Cosell's career didn't just peak, it exploded into cultural relevance. ABC executive Roone Arledge, a visionary who understood that sports could be entertainment as much as competition, made a bold and controversial move. He hired Howard Cosell to be part of the new Monday Night Football broadcast team. It was an unconventional choice. Cosell wasn't a former athlete. He wasn't beloved by fans. He was intellectual, opinionated, and often abrasive. A man whose presence guaranteed conflict. But that's exactly what Arledge wanted. He wasn't building a broadcast. He was creating a show. Cosell joined the booth alongside Don Meredith, the charming, wisecracking former Dallas Cowboys quarterback, and Frank Gifford, the clean-cut, all-American golden boy. The chemistry was electric and volatile. Cosell brought fire and analysis. Meredith brought laughs. Gifford was the steady hand. Together, they transformed a simple football broadcast into primetime drama. The audience didn't just tune in for touchdowns. They tuned in for the tension, the banter, the verbal sparring, and Cosell's razor-sharp commentary. Almost immediately, ratings soared. By the second season, ABC was charging an unheard of $65,000 per minute for advertising. Monday Night Football became more than a sports event. It was appointment television. Bars rearranged schedules around the game. Families gathered in front of the TV. Water coolers buzzed on Tuesday mornings. And at the center of it all was Cosell. Love him or hate him, you couldn't look away. Though Monday Night Football was about the NFL, Cosell still found ways to inject larger meaning into the broadcast. He offered social commentary during halftime. He dissected players' personal lives. He made every moment feel like a headline. His iconic style turned mundane plays into mythic moments. And nowhere was that more evident than in 1973, during the heavyweight title bout between Joe Frazier and George Foreman. As Frazier was knocked down repeatedly, Cosell's voice cut through the noise of history. Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! He didn't just describe the fight, he elevated it. That phrase became part of American pop culture, referenced in movies, comedy sketches, and highlight reels for decades. Cosell had redefined what it meant to be a broadcaster. He wasn't just reporting the action. He was narrating the emotional heartbeat of the nation. But controversy followed him like a shadow. His on-air feuds with colleagues, especially Don Meredith and Frank Gifford, became legendary. Cosell dismissed former athletes as "jucracy," a term he coined to criticize networks for hiring ex-players as broadcasters. He believed in training, preparation, and intelligence. Others called it arrogance. Either way, his coworkers bristled. He clashed with executives, reporters, even party guests. He nursed grudges, held grudges, and lived for confrontation. Yet behind that bravado was a quieter man, a devoted husband and father who read poetry to his daughters and never went anywhere without Emmy by his side. The cracks began to show in the 1980s. Cosell's drinking became problematic. He was caught slurring words on air, even vomiting during a live broadcast. ABC insiders whispered about his erratic behavior. Colleagues grew tired, but Cosell kept pushing forward. Then came the night of September 5, 1983. Monday Night Football. The Redskins versus the Cowboys. Wide receiver Alvin Garrett broke away for a run, and Cosell, in a moment of excitement, said, "That little monkey gets loose, doesn't he?" The backlash was swift and furious. Phones lit up at ABC. The media erupted. Civil rights leaders demanded action. Cosell, who had built a career defending black athletes, was suddenly being called a racist. He insisted he'd used the phrase before, even for white players. He said it was affectionate, a nod to Garrett's speed and agility. Tapes surfaced proving his claim. Even Alvin Garrett himself said he wasn't offended. Muhammad Ali defended him. Jesse Jackson stood by him. But the damage was done. Perception overpowered context. Cosell, the man who championed civil rights, was now the villain. ABC didn't fire him, but the writing was on the wall. By the end of the 1983 season, Cosell walked away. He was emotionally exhausted, disillusioned, and heartbroken. He never returned to television with the same prominence again. In 1985, he published a tell-all autobiography titled "I Never Played the Game." It was vintage Cosell, blistering, unapologetic, brutally honest. He tore into former colleagues, network executives, and the entire sports media industry. He accused broadcasters of selling out, pandering to fans, and abandoning integrity. Some hailed the book as bold. Others called it bitter. But everyone read it. After Emmy's death in 1990, something vital in Howard Cosell seemed to vanish. The fire that had fueled decades of defiance and brilliance dimmed almost overnight. Emmy had been his anchor, his closest confidant, his emotional ballast, the one person who could calm his storms. Without her, he seemed lost. Friends and family noted the change almost immediately. The once combative voice that had thundered through living rooms every Monday night was now quieter, frilier, more reflective. Physically, his health began to unravel with alarming speed. In 1991, doctors discovered a cancerous tumor in his chest, requiring surgery. He recovered, but it left him weaker. Not long after, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a cruel condition that attacked the very essence of who Cosell was, his voice. The tremors, the stiffness, the slurred speech, all of it chipped away at the man who had once declared, "I tell it like it is." Then came heart disease, a series of small strokes, and complications with his kidneys. He tried to continue working, keeping up appearances on radio and penning sharp essays, but the energy was gone. His absence from television, which had once seemed unthinkable, became the new norm. And in an era where flashy visuals and celebrity commentary had begun to dominate sports broadcasting, Cosell's thoughtful, challenging style felt like a relic of a different time. He spent his final years largely in seclusion, rarely seen in public, his towering presence now confined to memory. To many, it was a tragic decline, watching a once dominant force fade into silence. On April 23, 1995, Howard Cosell died in New York City at the age of 77. The cause, a heart embolism. News of his passing triggered a media storm of its own. The reaction was mixed. Some mourned the loss of a legend, a pioneer who revolutionized sports journalism and gave voice to the voiceless. Others remembered only the arrogance, the feuds, the infamous little monkey comment. Yet, in the days that followed, even his harshest critics acknowledged one truth: Howard Cosell had changed the game. Love him or loathe him, he made sports matter in ways no one else had dared. And when he left, a part of sports journalism, its conscience, its challenge, left with him. Yet over time, appreciation grew. In 1993, TV Guide named him the greatest sports broadcaster of all time. He entered the Television Hall of Fame. The American Sportscasters Association and the International Boxing Hall of Fame honored him. In 1996, a posthumous Emmy recognized his lifetime of contributions. Howard Cosell didn't just broadcast sports, he transformed them into a national conversation. He was never content to simply describe a touchdown or call a knockout. He believed sports were a reflection of society itself, a stage where larger dramas about race, class, politics, and morality played out in real time. In an era when most broadcasters stayed in their lane and stuck to the script, Cosell tore the script up and rewrote it in his own bold voice. He was among the first to inject intellectual analysis into sports commentary. Cosell treated athletes not as simple performers, but as complex human beings living through real struggles. He wasn't afraid to criticize bad behavior, question coaching decisions, or call out racism and injustice when others wouldn't dare. And he did so not for shock value, but because he believed sports could be a platform for truth. His partnership with Muhammad Ali is one of the most iconic in broadcasting history. While the rest of the media demonized Ali for changing his name, embracing Islam, and refusing to serve in Vietnam, Cosell respected his convictions. He not only called him Muhammad Ali when no one else would, he gave Ali a platform to speak when the world tried to silence him. Their friendship, laced with humor, debate, and deep mutual respect, showed what sports journalism could be at its best: human, honest, and fearless. Cosell also stood up for black athletes like Tommy Smith and John Carlos, whose 1968 Olympic Black Power salute cost them their careers. Where others saw controversy, Cosell saw courage. He gave voice to athletes who were more than just their stats. He gave them a chance to be heard as men. He coined phrases like, "he could go all the way," and "telling it like it is," and though they became catchphrases, they also became calling cards of a man who viewed broadcasting as a mission, not a performance. He challenged not just players, but the entire industry, pushing back against the rise of bureaucracy and demanding more than cheerleading from the press box. Even in his decline, when the spotlight had dimmed and his health faded, Cosell never wavered in his belief that truth mattered more than applause. His legacy isn't just in the reels of unforgettable calls or controversial interviews. It's in every journalist who dares to ask a hard question. It's in every broadcaster who believes that sports are about more than games. Cosell didn't just narrate the action, he gave it meaning. And that changed everything. Was he arrogant? Yes. Was he difficult? Absolutely. But Howard Cosell was also brave. And long after the cheers fade and the lights dim, we still hear that voice, echoing through time. This is Howard Cosell, telling it like it is.